guys, it's me, Jackie, and today I want to just make a little, possibly short video about what I read in October. And I don't think in all the times that I've been doing like book related videos, I've ever really done like a wrap up or talked about what I read. Seems like I'm always talking about what I'm currently reading or what I'm planning to read. So right off the bat, I haven't actually made a November TBR, although I might get to that. Let's see. I've got my iPad here, so I'm gonna pull up my Goodreads. So I've got my list of read right there. So I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I read 10 books in October, which is more books than I have read in a month in my entire life. There have been times where I've read 10 books over an 8-month period. The reason I was able to get through so many books this month was, well, first of all, I was in a huge reading mood. And second of all, I read a few through audio, like 3 or 4 through audio, and this month was the first time that I actually really started listening to audiobooks. I started listening mostly to classics, so right now I'm still in that mode of mostly just listening to classics through audio. Anyways, I hope you guys had a good Halloween. I'm going to pop up a picture here of some pumpkins and our costumes my sister and I wore. We were Hogwarts students and we just carved some pumpkins and got no trick-or-treaters, but that's all good. Yeah, you can see that my pumpkin is like a little tiny pumpkin inside a big pumpkin house and hers is like a cat. They looked way better at nighttime. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed those pumpkin photos. You can follow my Instagram down below to see them longer if you want to look at them longer. Anyways, let's get right into what I read in October. So the first book that I read was Love on the Other Side, an Agape collection. And so this is a manga collection of short stories about love in its many forms. So there's like a platonic type of love between a bird and a girl and all kinds of just strange and weird types of almost fantasy love. What I've noticed is most of them were like a magical creature or fantastical sort of creature and then like a human, usually some sort of like vulnerable type of human like a young girl or a young boy. I did find them a bit eerie. There's a few of them that were just perfect for the Halloween season. That just had me spooked, like a little cabin in the woods, and there's also like different relationships where the human is like, is this creature going to eat me? Am I going to die? And then it ends up that the creature does not want to eat them, or the creature does want to eat them but grows to love them, so decides not to eat them. So this is by the same author of Girl on the Other Side, which is another sort of dark, creepy manga series. If you read manga, you might know. So I gave this, let's see here, so I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. It didn't change my life. I found a few of the stories disturbing, some of the relationships a bit disturbing. I don't think this is a collection for everyone, but it was good for Halloween season nonetheless. So the second book I read in October, I read The Hobbit with my friend Justin, and we started this a long time ago, but I did just finish it in October. So I started it through my illustrated edition here, and then I finished it through audio while I was working. So it was just fun. Here's an example of the illustrations. I believe I've shown this before, so I won't go too into it, but I always enjoy rereading The Hobbit. I think this was my 3rd or 4th time reading it, so I don't think I'll reread Lord of the Rings right now. Maybe at a later date I will. I enjoyed the audiobook. We'll have to see who voiced it, like who read it, because they made Thorin sound like a Texas Ranger, and I could not get behind that. And every time the reader would voice Thorin, I was like, wait, who is this? And I'm like, I was taken out of the story almost, because I'm like, Thorin is not from the United States of America. He's not, you know, it was just weird. It was an older reading. So I gave The Hobbit 5 out of 5 stars, like always. There are some fun things that I experienced through The Hobbit as I reread it. I loved the way that Tolkien sort of described grief and death. Like when Bilbo is grieving, without going into spoilers, and he wraps himself into a blanket and he just feels so hurt and so sad. And I just thought it was so sweet the way Tolkien just described Bilbo in that like immediate grief, immediate feelings of loss. And so it made me want to just reread all my favorite stories to see ways that grief and loss is explored and things I wouldn't have picked up on before. So next up, I picked up Dancing at the Pity Party by Tyler Feder, or Feeder, I'm not sure how to say her last name. So this is a new graphic novel. You can see that I enjoyed it. It's basically a graphic memoir about Tyler and her mom's death. So she wrote this this book about basically the process, the time right before her mom was diagnosed with cancer, when her mom was diagnosed, during when her mom was sick, and while she was also attending college while her mom was sick, and then it goes into her mom's death, and then the grief and loss period after that. I'm gonna do a whole video about this book, so I'm not gonna go too into it, but I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It made me cry a lot. It's perfect for those who have lost a parent or someone close in their family. It goes right into all the little awkward details that happened that I thought nobody else experienced. It made me just feel so much less alone. So here's a quick look at the illustrations. It really is quite hilarious too in parts. It really brings it into like a lighthearted view, I guess, of losing and grieving a parent. And as far as I understand it, she wrote this book for people who need someone who just gets it, and I think she really nailed that. So I just recommend this for anyone who's lost a family member, or anyone who is like comforting someone who's lost a family member, so you can kind of understand what it actually looks like. So next up, I read Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder through audio. This was the best audiobook ever. I was listening to it like during Laura's winter in their log house while snow was falling outside. It was so cozy, and I loved the description of the dance they went to and how her grandma made the maple syrup, and they went out and got snow and put maple syrup on the snow, and the description of like the bears and all the little pioneering things that they had to do, and just the way they were just living so simply and just found so much fulfillment in that. I read this series as a kid, but I haven't read it since I've become an adult. But it's funny how much I remember and how much now as an adult I have different insight into the things she describes. It had me laughing at some points. It just had my heart so warm. It was nostalgic for me. I've put on hold Farmer Boy. I'm going to continue listening to the series through audio. I loved the narrator, so I gave that 5 out of 5 stars. Next up was the manga series Magus of the Library Volume 1. So this follows our main character Theo, who lives in the slums of this fantasy world. Basically, he's an elf, and so he faces a lot of bullying and abuse and discrimination for having pointy ears and living in the slums. He has no parents. His sister provides for him. She works 24/7 to put food on the table for him. He loves to read, and he dreams of going on like this big adventure, like he's the protagonist in like an epic fantasy novel. He's not allowed in the local library. The person who runs the library there doesn't let anyone from the slums in because he figures anyone from the slums will probably steal all these books, because it's set in like a historical fantasy world where books are rare and extremely expensive. So he dreams of going to a city called Aftzak, which is the city of books, where there is said to be a library there with every book that has ever been written in their entire world. So that's like his main dream. And then one day a Kafna, who is like a librarian from Aftzak, comes to town and meets Theo, and so they sort of form this really special connection. I cried like during every chapter of this book. Watching him be bullied and hurt made me so sad, and he had like these big sad eyes, and he was just so cute. I was so hurt, and it just made me so happy. So then I was crying because I was happy because when he met the Kafna and she was so kind to him and kind of lent him a book that was really important to him. And so I'm excited to continue on with the other volumes to see if he makes it to Aftzak, what other connections he forms. He is able to access the library by the end of the book. I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. Apparently everything I read in October was amazing. Then I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe through audio. That was a lot of fun. I think I gave it 4 stars. I think I've always given it 4 stars. Oh, I gave it 5 stars. I gave it 5 stars. Okay. I don't have a lot to say. I think you all know the Chronicles of Narnia. This is my second time going through the series. I just was remembering how much I don't like Edmund in the first book, but then I just remember he's a child, he does have a redemption arc, we're gonna get that. It's gonna be okay. So then I finished that. I followed up with Prince Caspian, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. That was a lot of fun too. I listened to that through audio. There was different narrators for the first book and the second book. They were both pretty good. I had fun getting to know Caspian as he grows through audio. It was just a lot of fun. And again, I just love the wintry scenes of like these classics, and just as it was like wintry outside, and just listening to them made my sadness about the snow just feel like so much more romanticized almost, which I really appreciated. Then I read Stranger Planet by Nathan Pyle, which is the second book in the Strange Planet series. Train. I'm just gonna keep talking and hopefully it's not too annoying. So I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and in this book, Nathan focused on comics that were about traditions, nature, emotions, and knowledge. And so if you don't know, these are compilations of comics that Nathan has made on his Instagram. You can follow him on Instagram. And they're just really hilarious little descriptions of everyday life in a really like literal way. And I have a really dry, literal sense of humor. Like if you've ever watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, everything Captain Holt says just makes me laugh so hard. So like for example, he calls alcohol mild poison. He sings Itsy Bitsy Spider, but he sings it like the small 8-legged spider type of thing, and it's just super fun. I just burst out laughing all the time. You have to read Strange Planet and Stranger Planet. They're like a super quick reads. You'll probably cry laughing. I think I've convinced at least 3 people to buy these books. And I say that, and I only have the first book, and I borrowed the second book through the library. So then next up I read The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. If you watched my recent reading vlog, then you would have seen me read this. I loved it. I gave it 4 out of 4 stars. This was my 3rd or 4th Neil Gaiman book. This was one of the best ones. This is like a middle grade fantasy novel that has a really macabre and dark sort of atmosphere. It's about our main character, Nobody Owens, who was born in a graveyard. His whole family was killed when he was a baby. It's set in the UK. It's kind of reminiscent of Harry Potter in certain ways. Nobody, his nickname is Bod, grows up in the graveyard. He's raised by ghosts and kind of like the graveyard keeper, who's human. He brings him his food and clothes and things like that. So Bod is being protected in the graveyard from someone called the Man Jack, who was responsible for killing his parents and his sister, who is looking for Bod because he is kind of like the chosen one, I guess. It has the chosen one trope, but not in a really obvious way. I'm just gonna say there's things that Bod is capable of that others aren't capable of, sort of a thing. A couple of the things I particularly loved about this novel was the way that death was explored in a really sort of gentle and natural way for a younger audience, but also just a way to normalize it too, because I feel like a lot of times we read books or watch films or have conversations that don't really talk about death, so we just pretend it's not really a thing a lot of the time. And I also just really enjoyed the way that Neil Gaiman talked about suicide and explained suicide to a child, how real that is and how it doesn't make the person who died that way a bad person. If you watch my vlog, I described that whole part of the book. It was absolutely amazing. Another thing I loved was the way Neil Gaiman described waiting, how you can feel someone waiting. I thought that was a lot of fun. So this is just like a pretty short book. It's a middle grade novel, like I said, but like perfectly entertaining for adults. I mean, I love middle grade, but I love middle grade that has like a darker or deeper tone to it. So this was perfect. It was perfect for Halloween. You should really read it at Halloween. So last one I read was A Gift for a Ghost by Borja Gonzalez. I have to read this again because I felt like the first time I read it, I didn't completely get it. It's kind of confusing and weird. Really nice illustrations though, very spooky. Look at this skeleton. So yeah, if you love graphic novels, you love fantasy and historical fiction and strong female main characters and like vibrant illustrations, this one's probably for you. It's got a dark vibe. It's about these 2 parallel worlds. So there's Teresa, who lives in the 1850s. She loves to write horror fiction, but her parents are, you know, setting her up to get married. At the same time, in 2016, there's these 3 girls who are starting a punk band, and it kind of goes through their adventures. The girls come across some weird things that might be a sign of the 2 parallel worlds connecting with each other. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars because it was good. I loved the illustrations. I loved the little artsy way things were described. I really liked Teresa. but I didn't fully understand what was going on. I also read it when I was half asleep, so I'm going to read it again and update my rating. Maybe it'll be the same. And I was just looking at the back and I see that it says, A Gift for a Ghost is one of those rare works that invites second and third readings, which are equally or even more delightful than the first. So I take that as they had to read it more than one time too to fully get it. So maybe I'll update you guys once I go through and read this again. Alrighty guys, so thanks so much for watching. Those are all the books that I read in October. I had a really good reading month. I'm excited to get into my November reads. I didn't really set a TBR for October, so that's kind of the way I roll sometimes. Stay tuned for more bookish videos and happy reading. Bye!